All right, this is a review for exam 3, which is coming up this week, covering chapters on the nervous system, the endocrine system, and on cardiovascular circulation. Okay, so the format will be the same as before. You'll have the same amount of time. There'll be one essay question and then multiple choice, true false questions, things like that. All right, so let's dive right into it. So, first, here is the nervous system, chapter 8. Okay, and here is a illustration showing the central nervous system, which includes the brain and spinal cord, and then the peripheral nervous system, which carries information to and from the rest of the body from the central nervous system. That includes the spinal nerves coming out from between the vertebrae from the spinal cord, and then the cranial nerves, which come out from the base of the brain. Okay, the nervous system, very important. It controls lots of the activities of the body, of homeostasis and things like that. The brain, the portion of the brain we're most concerned with is the cerebrum. The cerebrum is divided into two hemispheres, the left and right, then into lobes like the frontal lobe, the temporal lobe, the parietal lobes, and the occipital lobes. This is that part of the brain that does the things like sensation, movement, vision, hearing, conscious thought, planning, memory. These are all parts of the cerebrum is what's most active here. The functions of the central nervous system or of the nervous system include sensory, to carry information from the sense organs back to the brain; motor, carrying information, instructions from the central nervous system to muscles, glands, to carry out the things the body needs to be carried out; integration is the function of kind of comparing a bunch of different sensory inputs with motor commands and making decisions. Much of these decisions involve homeostasis, and kind of doing things like maintaining body temperature or the balance of sugars in the blood. The nervous system also is responsible for consciousness, memory, emotions, and thoughts. All of this is based on cells. And so the cells of the nervous system include the neurons or nerve cells. These are large, long lived cells that can send impulses very quickly down the length of long extensions called axons. And these travel electrically, and they can travel very, very quickly. And then they can be sent to other cells by at a synapse by a chemical transmitter. And then there's helper cells or glial cells. These are cells that help make nerves faster, support them, and do things like that. All right, we talked a little bit about memory, talked about concussions and things like that. Memory, we have short-term memory kind of in the frontal lobe. That memory can be turned into long-term memory, and that occurs at a region called the hippocampus, which is kind of deep in the temporal lobe. And if we get enough sleep, if something is important, if it's repeated, we can turn it into long-term memory. And so there's a bunch of ways to help, and those ways of helping long-term memory are important to know, especially as for college students. All right, then the second chapter we worked on was the endocrine system. These are a series of glands distributed throughout the body that are kind of also involved in controlling other structures and processes. And they do this by releasing chemical messengers called hormones. And those messengers carry signals that can travel to all cells of the body. Hormones, these chemicals, as I mentioned, traveled in the blood. They're released by the glands, and they will act at any cell that has a receptor. We call these cells target cells, or they're in target organs. And then what happens to that cell depends upon what that receptor is linked to. But this helps us control lots of different processes. Kind of like the nervous system, this is a control system. It functions to control things that don't need to be controlled so quickly. These would be things like homeostasis, the balance of like sugars in the blood, the balance of water in the body, things like growth and development. These are things where we need long lasting kind of monitoring, and we need bunches of different organs to react at the same time. And so we use hormones to do that. And so here, this picture shows the control of blood sugar levels by hormones of the pancreas, insulin and glucagon. Whenever blood sugar rises, the pancreas releases insulin, which acts at muscles and at the liver, and will do things that cause blood sugar to fall back to the normal levels. On the other hand, if blood sugar falls, the pancreas will release a different hormone called glucagon, and that will cause the liver to release sugar. It'll convert things to sugar so that it can release that, and it'll cause other cells to use other sources of energy. This is one of the most important hormones because it's if it doesn't work properly, if we stop responding to insulin or stop producing insulin, that's what causes diabetes, and this affects millions and millions of Americans. It is a major cause of blindness, of heart disease, of amputation, all sorts of things. And so being aware of the symptoms of diabetes and knowing its causes, which are kind of, we know risk factors right now, that things like being older, being overweight, having a family history, those things all lead to possibly diabetes. Okay, so that's the second chapter. The third chapter is the cardiovascular system, which includes the heart and blood vessels. The heart itself is very, very important. It's a muscular pump, which has 4 chambers, 2 on the right and 2 on the left. The 2 on the right side pump blood to the heart so it can get rid of carbon dioxide and pick up oxygen. The blood on the left side of the heart is pumped to the body, and that comes from the lungs, and so it's rich in oxygen and carries oxygen to all the tissues. As I mentioned, this system includes the blood vessels, the arteries, capillaries, and veins. Arteries carry blood away from the heart at high pressure and moving quickly, and they deliver it to capillaries, which are very small blood vessels where the exchange of materials between tissues and the blood occurs. Veins then collect the blood that's been used by the capillaries and deliver it back to the heart where it can be pumped. It can be pumped to the lungs and then reused again. We talked really about 2 major problems here. One is hypertension, which is persistent elevated resting blood pressure. And we know that this damages many, many organs. Some people, this is caused by dietary sodium, and so they're very sensitive to it. But in other cases, we really don't know what causes it. But we know it has profound effects if gone untreated over time. It damages small blood vessels in many organs. It damages the heart from all this extra work, leads to long term, it leads to weakened heart chambers. The other big problem here is atherosclerosis, which is the accumulation of fat and cholesterol deposits on the walls of the arteries, and it can actually block the artery. Here's a cross section of an artery where much of that artery is blocked by fat, cholesterol, inflammation, things like that. And this is the major cause of heart disease and heart attacks. It's a cause of stroke, and this can completely block off arteries and veins. Again, here we're not sure of the absolute cause every time, but we do know a bunch of risk factors. These risk factors are largely sensitive to lifestyle, and so we can, if we have a diet high in fat and cholesterol, that might lead to a problem. Smoking, being sedentary. We know that there are other things that can prevent a lot of atherosclerosis. Those include aerobic exercise. That's exercise that raises your heart rate for 15 to 20 minutes. So it's something like a brisk walk, maybe bike riding or playing a sport at an elevated level. And this improves the pumping efficiency of your heart. It lowers your resting heart rate, lowers blood pressure, and leads to weight loss and improved glucose control. Okay, so I'm going to stop there, look over those 3 chapters. You take the exam this week, and good luck. Study hard.